Today, UK inflation surprises on the upside. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to those posts covering finance and problem news with a distinctively Australian perspective. Well, the UK inflation numbers just came out from the ONS, and the Consumer Prices Index, including owner-occupiers' housing costs, the so-called CPIH, rose by 9.6% in the 12 months to October 2022. That's up from 8.8% in September. The largest upward contributions to the annual CPIH inflation rate came from housing and household services, principally from electricity, gas and other fuels, food, non-alcoholic beverages, and transport, mainly motor fuels. On a monthly basis, the CPIH rose by 1.6% in October, compared with a rise of 0.9% in October 2021. And the Consumer Prices Index, the CPI, rose by 11.1% in the 12 months to October 2022. That's up from 10.1% in September 2022. And that's the highest in 41 years. On a monthly basis, the CPI rose by 2% in October, compared with a rise of 1.1% in October 2021. Despite the introduction of the government's energy price guarantee, gas and electricity prices made the largest upward contribution to the change in both the CPIH and the CPI annual inflation rates between September and October. Rising food prices also made a large upward contribution to change with transport, principally motor fuels, second-hand car prices, making the largest, partially offsetting downward contributions to the change in the rates. The Consumer Price Index, including owner-occupiers' housing costs, rose by 9.6% in the 12 months to October, up from 8.8% in September. The annual inflation rate was last higher in the constructed historical estimates in December 1980, when it stood at 9.8%. On a monthly basis, CPIH rose by 1.6% in October, compared with a rise of 0.9% at the same time a year earlier. The CPI, the Consumer Price Index, rose by 11.1% in the 12 months to October. That's up from 10.1% in September 2022. In October 2022, the CPI annual inflation rate was the highest annual CPI inflation rate in the National Statistics Series, which began in January 1997. Indicative modelling consumer price inflation estimates suggest that the CPI rate would have been last high in October 1981, where the estimate for the annual inflation rate was 11.2%. The CPI monthly rate was 2% in October, compared with 1.1% in October last year. This means that between September and October 2022, the price of goods and services bought or consumed by UK households have increased by 2%. That matches the annual CPI inflation rate in July 2021, meaning prices rose between September and October by as much as they did in the entire year to July 2021. The largest contribution to the annual rate in October 2022 for both CPIH and CPI came from housing and household services. Other large contributions came from food and non-alcoholic beverages and from transport. Despite the introduction of the government's energy price guarantee, gas and electricity prices made the largest upward contribution to the change in both the CPIH and the CPI annual inflation rates between September and October. The second large upward contribution to the change came from rising food prices, while transport, principally motor fuels and second-hand cars, made the largest offsetting downward contribution. And finally, the ONS also made some comparisons between UK and other European and US inflation numbers. Now, of course, these are all measured quite differently, so they're not really very accurate. But nevertheless, it does give you a little bit of a sense of how things are stacking up. It's worth noting the US CPI for all urban consumers, the CPIU, is a monthly measure of US inflation, but its coverage is notably different from the HICP methodology that we've been discussing. So the bottom line is this: inflation is higher in the UK than was expected. And of course, this is in the day before we get the Chancellors revised budget, which will probably include some tax rises and spending cuts. The Bank of England will probably need to continue to lift rates higher because inflation is still, well, out of control. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.